Did you know that in recent years, Taiwan's PPP purchasing power parity has officially surpassed many European countries? But what does that actually mean? A lot of people point out that Taiwan's nominal GDP per capita isn't that high, so its international purchasing power must be low. They argue that even if the PPP index is high when factoring in domestic prices, it doesn't really mean much on the global stage. But is that actually true? Hello, I'm Mark. I'm currently living in Europe as an MBA student, and I'm super passionate about history, geography, and comparing economic development. So without further ado, let's tackle the first question. How does Taiwan's GDP compare to the top 20 European economies? If you look at the data compared to the top 20 European nations, Taiwan ranks 9th, coming in at $805 billion. The most direct way to judge a country's economic strength is to look at it relative to its population. Taiwan's population ranks 8th in this group, about 20% larger than the Netherlands. This means Taiwan's economic scale is actually very healthy. Considering our total population isn't massive, and our heavy industrialization didn't really accelerate until the 1970s during the famous 10 major construction projects era, reaching this level of GDP in just about 60 years is incredibly impressive. In contrast, countries like the UK, France, Germany, and the Netherlands have built their wealth on centuries of infrastructure development and overseas investments, which naturally result in a massive total GDP. Now, let's move on to the second issue, GDP per capita. A lot of netizens claim Taiwan does poorly here, sitting at only $34,426, ranking 15th. That's a 6-spot drop compared to its total GDP ranking. Why the big drop? The math is simple. GDP per capita is just total GDP divided by population. Since Taiwan has a relatively larger population compared to some of these European peers, the per capita figure naturally drops. But does this mean Taiwanese people have weak international purchasing power? Actually, there's a massive trap here. Yes, GDP per capita is the average economic output per person, and at first glance, it seems to represent a citizen's buying power. But in reality, if you want to compare the international purchasing power between two countries, you have to look at what's left after deducting taxes and basic living expenses. You need to look at the actual savings, the true discretionary income. That's the money people actually use to travel and spend overseas. Let's break it down. Suppose the nominal annual salary in Taiwan is $26,000, while in the Netherlands it's roughly $55,000, and in Germany it's $52,000. Next, we deduct taxes and social security. In Taiwan, that's about 10% to 15%. In the Netherlands, it's a whopping 35% to 45%, and in Germany, it's around 35% to 45%. Then we subtract basic living expenses. If we calculate the cost of living in the Netherlands as 1.46 times that of Taiwan, and Germany as 1.42 times, look at the remaining discretionary income. Taiwan is left with about $10,500, while Netherlands with $11,000 and Germany with $12,000. As you can see, the actual depositable income is almost exactly the same. So when netizens say Taiwan's lower nominal GDP per capita means Taiwan's people can't afford to travel and enjoy life as much as the Europeans, that statement is simply wrong. And you probably noticed I only assumed the European cost of living was about 1.5 times higher. Anyone who has actually lived in Europe knows the real multiplier is often much higher than that. So back to our question, is Taiwanese international purchasing power weaker than the European powers? The answer is no. Basically, the ability of Taiwanese person to take overseas vacations and buy designer bags is right on par with major European countries, and even stronger than many others. What we just discussed is the ability to spend abroad, but what about domestic consumption and the quality of daily life? How does Taiwan compare to the top 20 European nations on the front? I'll be making a dedicated episode for that exact comparison soon. Taiwan has genuinely seen massive growth in recent years, no joke. In the next video, I'll give you an even clearer picture of the true living standards in Taiwan today. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button, subscribe, and share it with your friends. See you in the next one. Ciao ciao.